Meeting started, and let's do the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, will Sylvie call the roll, please?
Broadway.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
Harvey.
Here.
Holmes.
Here.
Nader. Powers.
Here.
Rohan.
Here.
Trevis. Bueller.
Okay, we have a quorum, though. Item number C, closed session. There will be no closed session, so you can strike that from your agenda. And I'll take approval action on item number D, approval of the minutes for October 24th, 2018.
Move approval.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay, item number E, approval of minutes November 14th, 2018.
I'll move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor? Aye. And one abstention. Item number F, approval of minutes for November 14th, 2018 at 6 p.m.
Move approval.
Second? Do I have a second?
Oh, I'll second. Miles away.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstained? And abstained, myself as well. Okay, item number G, does anyone have any changes to the order or anything on the agenda item, or do I have a motion to accept the agenda as it is?
Second.
Moving second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's go to item number H, which is public comment. Do I have any public comment here this morning? Seeing none, I'll go to item number I, which is the consent calendar. These are expected to be routine and non-controversial. Do I have any requests for change or pull an item on the consent calendar?
I have none, Madam Chair, and I'll move approval.
It's been moved in second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Now, let's make sure I get on to the next. We are now going to adjourn as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency and convene as the Airport Land Use Commission, and Executive Director Lukens, who's going to give us a presentation.
David Melko, our senior planner, will make the presentation on both these items regarding the Airport Land Use Commission.
Good morning, members of the commission. So this item here is the consistency determination on the special use district northeast Washington specific plan. And in general.
I can't hear you very well, David. Thanks.
Okay, I'll lean forward closer. Sorry.
You didn't have the mic with
Lights on. Okay, so the specific plan area is located at Nelson Lane and State Route 65. And so the map up there shows you the location of the specific plan area. It's about 198 acres. With respect to the airport compatibility plan for the Lincoln Regional Airport, it's outlined on there and on the map, and two zones bisect this specific plan area, Zone C1 and Zone C2. With respect to the land use plan, the dividing line of the zone C1 it includes commercial uses, and C2 includes residential uses with some open space and a little bit of commercial. So we are recommending a consistency determination here for the board's approval. The City of Lincoln had requested that we review this in light of the Lincoln Regional Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. The residential units meet the density limitations within the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan. The multifamily residential units located in the specific plan can only be located in the C2 zone. The typical condition placed on residential is because of its proximity to the airport and because of the location in the C1 and the C2 zones, requires an overflight notification as part of the recordation process when people buy properties and homes. With the commercial uses, all the commercial uses meet the airport land use compatibility intensity requirements. Because of the proximity to the airport and because of the style of buildings nowadays in terms of a lot of glass associated with buildings, the design guidelines and the development should avoid building materials that produce glare and bright lights. This location of the specific plan is to the southeast of the runway, and so it's fairly close. And so in that regard, the design guidelines for the development should take that into account. And then once again, while not required by state law, in the airport land use compatibility plan, we do have a policy that indicates that commercial uses should also have an airport proximity disclosure notice so that people know that when you locate a business here and when you have employees and you're seeing airplanes fly over, they are notified that there is an airport close by. The open space includes on-site detention areas. That's built in with the natural land areas and with parks, and some of the open space will be used for water detention. I believe the city uses the water detention and holds water up to 24 hours, which is permissible under FAA regulations. The requirement here is to make sure that water isn't held longer, because when you hold water longer in a detention basin, it becomes more of a wetland feature and it becomes attractive to wildlife and to birds. And because, once again, of the proximity to the airport, and birds and airplanes don't always mix, we're recommending that the detention basins be designed with consistent with FAA guidelines. And then lastly, once again, because of the proximity of the specific plan area with respect to the airport, and this is a general aviation airport. General aviation airports have a higher incidence of where airplanes need to make emergency landings. And so in that regard, there is a requirement in the airport land use compatibility plan to have open land area, and their requirements are identified on the slide and in more detail in the staff report. And with that, there are representatives here from the City of Lincoln, and there is a representative from the Frege Design Group, the applicant's representative, in case if there are any questions. And I'd be glad to answer any questions from the board. And with that, I recommend you open up the public hearing.
Any questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll open up the public hearing. Any public comment?
Morning, Tony Frege with Frege Design Group. Been working on this project for several years. I would like to take the time to just thank you for taking the time to consider this project, and also to let you know this project really fit general plan with the City of Lincoln, but also it's to the east of the project that came in front of you a few months ago, or maybe almost now a year ago, Village 5. So we worked hard to make sure that this project connects and work with the city general plan, and we thank you in advance for taking the time to consider our project, and hopefully we get okay. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of our public hearing. Any other questions or comments from the
Oh,
board?
there's someone in the audience.
Oh. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up. My apologies. You come on up and state your name and then make your...
Homeowners that's going to really be affected, and we're completely against this whole thing. We moved into the area because of the surrounding area and how beautiful it was, and this is all being destroyed, and it's going to affect the home values and everything. Also, most of the people didn't even know about this hearing, and we were one of the people that knew about it. We spread the news, and everyone that went to the regular hearings were like, when did this happen? We didn't know. We didn't get any notices or anything. So I barely made it here today just to put in the word that all the homeowners are totally against this project, because it's going to completely devastate everything we first purchased our houses in the area for. it makes Lincoln grow completely out of proportion that it needs to be at this point, because we like the old town feel. That might mean nothing to anybody else, but, you know, by the time we're going to be able to sell our houses, we're going to lose all the value that we have in it now, because there's going to be 100 more houses there. And, you know, that's a very big thing to us. And also the area, the wildlife, we enjoy the wildlife. And their whole plan is to take it away from us. I don't have really anything technical to say, but just that I was asked to come down here by anybody who couldn't come down. And nobody in the whole area likes it. Our mayor seems to think this is the best thing, but there's so many other projects that are going on in Lincoln right now. This is just making us a bigger city. That's all it's doing. But it's destroying everything that made Lincoln what it is. The nice homesy area. This is going to turn into any other city in the area. That's not really what anybody in Lincoln really wants that I've ever heard. But thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Is there a representative from the city of Lincoln who can talk about what that area is zoned and land use and the notifications and process that you've gone through to get here?
May I?
Yeah.
So the notification for this particular public hearing. So notification was published in the Lincoln Messenger, because that's the newspaper where the airport is located. And that notification was published November 22nd. And we also put it into the Lincoln e-newsletter, so that goes out to residents, and I get a copy of that, and every day there was a notification of the Airport Land Use Commission hearing. We also provided, did a mailing to, the applicant provided a mailing list of 242 property owners within 300 feet of the specific plan area, and that's required under the Public Utilities Code. And so we mailed that out to notice to all the property owners. So that's the notification that occurred for this particular public hearing. There may be other notifications that the city did, and Paul perhaps could speak to that and the process for the zoning.
Yeah, thank you. And just for clarification for the gentleman who just spoke, this is a hearing for the Airport Land Use Commission, whether or not they support that it fits within airport land use guides and doesn't have anything to do with what the zoning of the land is. That's the general plan, correct?
It's a compatibility determination.
Correct. And is that what you were going to say?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay. So maybe I didn't need you after all.
Well, anyway, I'm Paul Richardson. I'm a consultant with Municipal Advisory Service. I'm helping Lincoln out on processing this project. If you have any other questions, I'm available to answer.
Okay.
Thanks,
Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Nader?
As the current mayor of Lincoln, was referenced that I made a statement that I thought this was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't believe I ever made that statement, but I will affirm what has already been said, that this is part of our general plan, which has been in place since 2008. The time to have commented on what this particular area was going to be would have been then, and unfortunately, maybe these people moved in since then, but that's one thing. When you move into an area, you want to take a look at what's going to happen in the future and make that decision whether or not you're going to live with what the city has planned for its future. One of the things that's been important to me in my time on the council is economic development. And when I go and talk to companies about coming to Lincoln, they ask, what is your population? And I tell them 48. And they say, well, come back and talk to us when you're 65. Just because we grow as a city doesn't mean we can't keep that small town feeling. Being a fourth generation resident of the city, I've strived to do that. And I don't see why we can't do that even as we grow. So I felt compelled to respond that the mayor thinks this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, because I didn't make that statement.
Thank you, Mr. Nader. Seeing as there's no more comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Okay, item number K.
Okay. Hopefully they'll flash the PowerPoint up. So this second item here is to request to approve a special condition exception. And the special condition exception is on a portion of the specific plan area that you just determined was compatible with the airport land use compatibility plan. So the area in question is the area darkened at the corner of Nelson Lane and State Route 65. It's a 17-acre parcel. It's proposed under the land use plan that you just saw as commercial. It's within the C1 zone. So the request is to exceed the zone C1 intensity requirements for the 17 acres of commercially zoned land located on the northeast corner of 65 and Nelson Lane. And so the Lincoln Regional Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan has two intensity requirements, and both must be met. So the maximum site-wide average is 150 people per acre, and the maximum for on a single acre can be 450 people. And so the request here is to increase the maximum number of people allowed on 17 acres from a little over 2,500 to 4,800. And at this point in time, we're recommend, as part of the staff recommendation, it's to open the public hearing and continue it to January 23rd. The applicant has requested this action and is also in the process of providing us additional information so that we can process this special condition and to determine whether or not a special condition exception is actually needed for this particular project. There's been some back and forth between the applicant, myself, the city, and myself, the city and the applicant, and I'm optimistic that perhaps that we can work this thing through, and so that when we come back in January, that maybe the special condition exception is not even needed. And so, but at this point in time, we have published the public hearing, and because there's still information that needs to be provided, we're recommending that you open it and that you continue it to the 23rd of January.
Okay, so, and accept public comment as
Correct.
well while we're here?
Correct.
Okay, great. Anyone on the board?
No questions.
I'll reach to you, Mr. Nader. Anything at all to your airport? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Any public comment?
Again, Tony Frazier with Frazier Design Group. As it was mentioned, we are still working on this issue. We're hoping that it may go away because it depends how you read the definition of things. Maybe the applicant that's looking at that 70 acres and looking to have the increased numbers, maybe we're looking at it differently with them. And we thought a couple more weeks may help us to determine if we really need it. And maybe it's not 4,800, maybe it's 3,200 or a number a little bit less. And again, this project is important to the city. We want to make sure that whoever goes there brings the economy up and brings the tax dollars to the city, which benefit the county. But at the same time, we don't want to ask for something that's not needed. So that's why we asked for the deferral to January. We appreciate doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to continue to the
Move
January.
continuance of the item?
I'll second.
Move second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, we'll adjourn as the Airport Land Use Commission and convene as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. First on the item is consent calendar. All items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. Do I have a motion to accept the consent calendar? Moved in second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. I'm going to adjourn as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency and convene as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency and go to item number M, Regional Transportation Plan Update. Aaron, we get you? Okay, great.
Thank you, Board Chair. So this morning, we wanted to talk about 3 items that are listed in your staff memo, and we'll go through those. But before going through, I want to kind of reflect back on our special meeting in November, recognizing that we went through a deep dive on this topic of the regional transportation plan, and so I'm going to kind of spare a lot of the background and details that I typically provide with an introduction. So getting right into it, our first topic that's listed in your staff memo is a preliminary draft revenue estimates. So when we develop the regional transportation plan, it is a 20-year long-range funding plan. We have to look at the reasonably available federal, state, and local funds that may be available during that time to deliver projects. And so we take into account historical funding trends, our current status of where different program funding levels are at, and how we see things continue into the future. So those various revenue assumptions have been taken into account to develop these revenue estimates. The first three bullets on your screen identify some changes to revenue estimates that we've seen over time, and these are more of longer-term declines in what has typically been our core revenue basis, which is sales tax and fuel tax. Those have been the most predominant fund categories to deliver transportation projects. So with e-commerce and improving fuel efficiencies over time, we see that those funds will continue to dwindle. And we've seen that, I think, at our local agencies with declining sales tax revenues over time. The last four bullets are shown here are other areas of our revenue estimates that we see that will continue to provide funding or new sources of funding. The Senate Bill 1 that stayed intact with the failure of Prop 6 back in November will provide a new revenue source for the state and counties moving forward to rehab roadways, fill potholes, maintain our transit systems and other facilities that are in place. So this is a new revenue source introduced into the plan. We've also had much greater statewide success with the active transportation program. When we developed these estimates 4 years ago, we assumed we might be lucky enough as a county to receive about $1 million annually from this competitive program. Our jurisdictions have actually done much better than that. We've received on average for the first 3 cycles about just over $3 million each cycle, so we've upped our revenue estimates there. And then the revenue estimates will also assume a South County transportation sales tax district. So when we take into account our revenue estimates and looking at where we are and where we're going for moving forward to 2040, we see that this plan update, there may be additional revenues available to the tune of about totaling $6.8 billion. This is in contrast to the approximately $5.9 billion that we assumed with the 2036 RTP. So while there is some additional monies there, a lot of the monies that I had identified on the prior slide are a lot of the short-term monies we still see over time. There will be some declines in those sales tax and fuel based revenues. These numbers here that we've shown here on the local funds in gray, the orange funds that are in state, and the federal dollars in blue. Those are all shown in Table 1 of your staff memo. This also presents a little bit of change in terms of the overall funding pie. Based on Senate Bill 1 and some of the other funds coming through, the state share of our revenues that we may have over the next 20 years will start to increase. So in our prior plan, state funds accounted for about 19%. That'll be moving up to about 23% under the current assumption, so a little bit more revenues there from the state. And on the local side, where the largest source of funds are that are controlled by local agencies and that flow through PCTPA, will move from 74% controlled by local agencies to about 71% because of the influx in state monies. So these numbers are important because our transportation plan is a financially constrained document. We have to identify the reasonably available funds over the life of the plan and constrain those to the projects that have been submitted for consideration over the time period. Remembering back to November, there were approximately 296 projects that were submitted by local agencies, PCTPA, SPARTA, and Caltrans for consideration in the upcoming plan. These projects represent long-standing priorities across all modes, from maintaining the facilities we have, constructing new facilities to address growth, to address existing construction and congestion in the areas. There's also projects in there that are lump sum, so ongoing roadway maintenance, ongoing bus replacement. So there's a number of programs that are part of that list. It also included 72 new projects that are primarily development driven. We are in a much better situation than back in 2014 when we went through this exercise. So I think with a healthier economy, development community is feeling that they can start to move more projects along through the county. On the left, in the blue bar here, you'll see the $6.8 billion in revenue that's estimated through the 20-year life of the plan. And the orange on the right is also that $6.8 million constraining those projects. I did mention, or in your staff report, it's mentioned that the total project expenditures over the period of time total $7.1 billion. So the 6.8 is our constrained revenues, and then there's about $300 million that we can't fit within what we're estimating for future funds. So those projects are all listed in your staff memo under tables 2A, which are the financially constrained projects, and table 2B are those projects that we were unable to financially constrain at this point in time. Those projects we were able to delineate between financially constrained and unconstrained by prior conversation with jurisdictions on the priorities and which projects have more certainties than others to try to determine how we fit those projects into the financially constrained and unconstrained categories. What our revenues and constraints don't incorporate, and some of you may recall from our November discussion, is other revenue sources that SACOG Board of Directors and committees may be considering. These additional funds may be tolling of area roadways, congestion pricing, and when I say area roadways, predominantly freeways and the highways. Congestion pricing, much like some of the expressways in the Bay Area that you may have seen on I-80 or 680 or other roadways. And potentially something that's being discussed at the state level, which would be kind of a roadway user charge based on how many miles you drive. So those are some of the other topics that are being considered at the SACOG area, and being that our two plans are linked, I just want to say at this point in time at the staff level, we're still waiting to see how those discussions play out. It may still be a little too early or preliminary to incorporate those into long-term revenue estimates, and we'll continue to follow the process unless we receive direction from you to do so otherwise. And to wrap up the third item of the presentation and in the staff memorandum is the Regional Transportation Plan Consultant contract that we are seeking. This is an augmentation to staff. With every regional transportation plan, we are required to develop a programmatic environmental impact report per state guidelines. It identifies the high-level impacts of delivering all these projects. It is not a project-level environmental document, though. So each project's moving forward, we'll still have to go through some level of environmental review. The document, through these consultant services, will also receive some quantitative data illustrating the investments in our infrastructure. A lot of times, we want to be able to tell a story of we're putting all this money into improvements in roadways, into our transit system, and into maintaining our roadways. But what does that really mean to you or I or the layperson? So we want to try to develop some measures that we can talk about improvements in travel time for commuters, how much better the pavement may get as a result of funding, and whether or not we are able to achieve some travel time reliability. So these are just a few examples of some of the measures that we will want to try to develop and highlight through this process to be able to better tell the story of what our regional transportation plan accomplishes. The contract itself would be with De Novo Planning Group. They were the highest ranked out of 3 firms to submit on this proposal, and the contract would be for a not to exceed amount of $120,000, which is budgeted in our overall work program. The staff memo also identifies that $30,000 of that $120,000 contract will come from the state of California and Caltrans that we receive for a competitive rural planning assistance grant to help with the public outreach on this effort. Those efforts will be to try to drive people our constituents as we have in past efforts with the short range transit plan and the bikeway master plan, to drive them to online surveys and online engagement that will help that will supplement our in-person meetings that we're going to look at with existing stakeholders. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have, and just for a reminder, we are requesting approvals on the preliminary draft RTP revenue estimates, the draft transportation project list, and the ability to authorize our executive director to negotiate and sign a contract with the De Novo Group for a contract amount not to exceed $120,000.
Any questions?
Yes. Can you tell me where the $120,000 figure came from, as far as an estimate or a Nova bid, or why is it $120,000 to do the general work on this overall plan?
Yeah, I can answer that. So we had budgeted approximately $120,000 in overall work program. The proposal that all three proposals came in very close to each other, right around $109,000, $110,000. So the De Novo proposal is approximately $109,000 right now. What we're doing is, though, negotiating with them on other aspects of the contract and the work. One of the items that may be rolled into that, and that's why it's a not to exceed amount, is with an environmental impact report, we do have to submit to California Fish and Wildlife as well as to the county recorder's office, and there are costs with submitting those environmental documents to each of those agencies. So we may want to roll some of those costs into the contract to have the consultant do all that work, as opposed to us drive down to Sacramento, submit the paperwork, drive to the county, submit the paperwork. So that is why there's a not to exceed amount. But we are well under that budgeted amount.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it just wasn't clear to me whether the three firms had submitted proposals that included a cost.
Yeah, they did, and they're all very competitively priced next to each other.
Any other questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a
Motion to approve.
Madam Chair, I'll move staff recommendation as identified on page 48 of our staff report.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay, item number N, selection of chair and vice chair for 2019. Do you have any comment, or you just want me to go right into it?
Just that this is the normal point in time every year that the board decides on its chair and vice chair. We indicated in the staff report the rotation that we're currently using. One of the things that has been done in past years when a chair comes up for a jurisdiction whose representative has not been on the board before, the board has typically deferred to the next jurisdiction in the chain to fill that slot and basically trade those slots between those jurisdictions. We consulted with our legal representation on our bylaws, which is what governs this procedure, and that again is past practice, how I just outlined, but there could be, you're open to make any kind of trade or change or exchange that you see fit at this time.
Okay, thank you. I know, Steve, you, Colfax is next, right?
Right. I would like to do what was written in our thing where we trade with Placer County to go ahead and go up into the chair position and give Colfax the vice chair again. I believe there'll be an engineer put on this.
Forget that.
They ought to be able to handle it. So.
Okay,
If
so.
that's the case, I'd move Supervisor Holmes represent Placer County as the chair for PCTPA for 2019.
And you want to just add Colfax as vice chair?
And then whomever represents Colfax would serve as vice chair for 2019, yes.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none. Okay, so next, I believe, Mr. Holmes, you have something for Mr. Nader?
Oh, yeah, is that me?
Yeah, it's your turn, yeah.
Oh. That's pretty nice. Well, Stan, you'll really be happy with this because it's actually not a piece of paper. Oh, it's a plaque that you can put on your wall of achievement. And so I am pleased and proud to be able to present this to you in appreciation of your dedicated service as a champion for local and regional transportation infrastructure in Placer County and providing guidance and support in finding solutions to transportation funding challenges. Placer County is proud to be a member of the This is presented by the Placer County Transportation Planning AG Board of Directors. You served from 2013 to 2018, and you are commended for actively and effectively serving as a representative for the city of Lincoln toward the betterment of the entire county. And personally, I just want to thank you for your leadership on this board and your leadership in the sometimes tumultuous city of Lincoln. You've been a very steadfast rock as Lincoln moves forward. So let me bring, I'd be more honored to bring this to you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Stan.
Well, I want to thank you for this acknowledgement. It's been my pleasure to represent the city of Lincoln on this board. I appreciate serving with all the board members and working with the staff. It's been a great experience. I was pleased that our city supported the tax measure 72%, and had other communities been likewise, we would be building roads here and there and everywhere. So I know that that's a big mission going forward, to create that sense of ownership so that we can access some of the state and federal monies. And I will continue to be an advocate and assist where I can. So I will be around. And thank you again for this nice acknowledgement. Congratulations.
Thank you, Stan. And now it's my honor to thank Susan for her years. She too was from 2013 to 2018. I'm not going to read the same thing that's for Stan, but you and I have served on several committees and commissions together as chairs, vice chairs, and just as members, and you've always been very professional and supportive and a mentor to a lot of people. You're going to be missed greatly, but I know transportation is important to you, and I know that you and I both are not going anywhere. Like we're still going to be advocates of it all, and all that you've done over these years. I look forward to seeing you do more things in a different role, but thank you for what you've done here for the PCTPA. So I would love to give you that, and if you have a few things to say, we'd love to hear them.
Well, thank you very much. I think Stan said everything I wanted to say. Including, as you've also mentioned, an intention to stay involved and interested and participating where we can in transportation for Placer County. It's very important for all of us. It's been a pleasure to work with all of you. Thank you.
If we had a iPhone or a camera or something, it would be nice to get a photo of Stan and Susan for the newsletter or something before we go into our closed session. So that'd be awesome. Okay, Executive Director's Report, Mr. Lucan.
Thank you, and I just have a few quick items to update you on this morning. One of which is the congested corridor plan that we're beginning to work on. Our project manager for that project is going to be our Deputy Director, Luke McNeil Caird, and David Melko is going to work with him very closely on that project, as well as other staff as well. Just wanted to outline that we are out to RFP for consultants for that project. We're expecting responses and proposals on the 14th of this month. We are working very closely, and what I wanted to mention is we're working very closely with SACOG to refine the scope of work for that. SACOG sees this as an opportunity to potentially look at some pilot projects for the region and using this corridor plan, which is in both Placer and Sacramento, northeastern Sacramento counties, as potentially a pilot to look at things like the hot lanes or fast lanes along the I-80 corridor, and also to look at a better way to do transit, looking at borders as not being obstacles for getting people to where they want to go. So we're working as well as we're out to RFP for consultants. We're also working very closely with SACOG and there are 14 partner agencies working with them as we move closer to starting this project in January. So in January, we'll be bringing to you a request for a contract for that project. It's looking like the funding for that project will probably principally for this first part come from PCTPA and CCJPA. with the latter part of funding for the project, or phase 2 of that project, potentially being added to by SACOG and District 3 of Caltrans. So we've had to kind of look at phasing the funding of that. Initially, we expected all 4 agencies to be able to bring funding initially, but now it's looking like we'll have to phase that to meet those agencies' funding criteria. The second project I wanted to mention was the Auburn Airport. Again, this is an upcoming project. The airport received its FAA approval to go forward with the process through the Airport Land Use Commission, and so initially, David Melko on our staff is working with the City of Auburn to select a consultant to move forward with that plan. And then just a heads up that we're going to be having a number of hearings in the spring to consider that plan and the impact on the airport, and also its coordination with the DeWitt Center Master Plan project. A little bit of an update on the I-80 Highway 65 interchange project. Caltrans, as you know, is moving very quickly on the project with their contractor Flatiron Construction, putting in all the rebar and getting ready to pour the new bridge section here very soon. We are at the same time putting putting together our video for the month of December. We were hoping to have that today, but it's taking a little bit longer. But it's going to feature Assemblyman Kiley and representatives from the Galleria and also from Scandinavian Designs in Rockland. And its focus is going to be on retail and it's the impact of the project on those major retail projects and how those retail projects are open for business during the construction. So we'll be letting the board know as we put that video out in mid-December. We'll let you know when it's available, and so you can view that, and then we'll probably bring that back to the January meeting, but it'll be a little bit after the holidays, which was its purpose. And then lastly, on the funding strategy, we are again moving forward after our special board meeting in November with FM3 today that you approved on the consent agenda. We will, similar to selection of the outreach consultant, we'll be asking for a subcommittee of the board to help guide the questions and the polling that will be done likely in March of 2019. So it's been probably most effective to have a subcommittee of the board as opposed to the full board in terms of wordsmithing that and providing guidance to Kurt Balow, the prime consultant on that project. So we'll be reaching out to board members asking for your participation in that process. And with that, that concludes my executive director's report.
Any questions?
I have none.
Okay, item number Q, any board direction to staff?
I have none.
Seeing none, item R is your informational items, and thank you, it's been a pleasure. This is my last meeting, and we are going to adjourn to closed session in conference room A. For PCTPA, and we hope he continues it. And I just want to add that Aaron, David, and Luke, who attend these meetings, it's been great to see you guys participating and doing a lot of the presentations and the good work that you're doing as well, and we really appreciate it. And Kathleen, sorry, she's not. Anyway, so Happy New Year, happy holidays. This meeting is adjourned.